Sarah was a pillar of her community. She was known for her unwavering dedication and her compassionate heart. Everyone in the neighborhood knew they could count on her in times of need. A dedicated nurse, a loving daughter, a reliable friend. Sarah wore many hats, and she wore them all with grace and humility. Her days were filled with caring for patients, sharing laughter with friends, and bringing joy to her family. But her life took a dark turn one cold November night. The streets were eerily quiet, and the air was thick with tension. Sarah felt a sense of unease as she walked home alone, unaware that her life was about to change forever. A dispute with a neighbor escalated, police were called, and Sarah found herself on the wrong side of the law. What started as a minor disagreement quickly spiraled out of control, leading to a nightmarish encounter with law enforcement. This wasn't a case of petty theft or disorderly conduct. It was a grave matter that would test Sarah's strength and resilience. The charges against her were severe and the consequences potentially life-altering. This was about police brutality, abuse of power, and a justice system that seemed rigged against her from the start. Sarah was thrust into a battle against forces much larger and more powerful than herself. From that night forward, Sarah's life became a relentless pursuit of justice. She pored over legal documents, sought advice from lawyers, and walked the halls of courthouses with a newfound determination. She faced an uphill battle, her once unwavering faith in the system slowly crumbling. The stress and exhaustion were evident, but Sarah refused to give up. She knew that giving in would mean accepting defeat. The police, who should have protected her, became her tormentors. They harassed and intimidated her, trying to break her spirit. But Sarah stood firm, knowing that her fight was just. The courts, meant to be bastions of fairness, seemed deaf to her pleas. The judges appeared uninterested, and the legal proceedings felt like a farce. Yet, Sarah continued to fight, driven by a deep sense of justice. The weight of her experience, the injustice, pressed down on her, threatening to crush her spirit. The nights were long and filled with doubt, but Sarah's resolve never wavered. Yet Sarah refused to be silenced. She knew the truth. She spoke passionately at protests, documented every detail, and remained resolute in her quest. Her voice became a rallying cry for others who had suffered similar fates. She knew what happened that night. The memories were vivid and the injustice clear. Sarah's determination to expose the truth grew stronger with each passing day. Sarah became a reluctant warrior, determined to expose the truth about the Bromley police officer who had wronged her so deeply. She gathered evidence, confronted those in power, and refused to back down. She was fighting not just for herself, but for everyone who had been silenced by fear and intimidation. Her struggle resonated with many, and she found herself surrounded by a community of supporters. Her quest for justice was a beacon of hope in a system shrouded in darkness. Sarah's courage and determination inspired others to stand up and fight for what was right, proving that even in the darkest times, hope and justice can prevail. Sarah's case exposed a deeply troubling truth about the institutions meant to protect us. Her journey began with a simple complaint, a plea for justice that quickly spiraled into a nightmare. She encountered a wall of silence, a brotherhood of blue that seemed impenetrable. The officers she approached closed ranks, their loyalty to each other outweighing their duty to serve and protect. Her attempts to report the officers' misconduct were met with indifference, even hostility. Each visit to the station felt like a step deeper into a labyrinth with no exit. Internal investigations, often conducted by colleagues of the accused, yielded no results. The process was a mere formality, a charade that offered no real hope of resolution. Complaints to oversight bodies disappeared into a bureaucratic abyss, leaving Sarah feeling lost and betrayed. The paperwork piled up, each form a reminder of the system's inefficiency. The system, it seemed, was designed to protect its own, The more she pushed for answers, the more the walls closed in around her. Police officers operated with impunity, their actions rarely scrutinized, their word rarely questioned. The badge became a shield, not just from danger, but from accountability. This culture of silence and lack of accountability created an environment where misconduct could flourish, unchecked and unchallenged, where victims like Sarah were denied justice. The echoes of her pleas for help faded into the background noise of a system unwilling to change. The very institutions that should have been her allies had become obstacles in her pursuit of truth. Each door she knocked on was another dead end. The failures extended beyond the police force. The entire justice system seemed rigged against her, a maze designed to wear her down. The justice system designed to ensure fairness appeared to be skewed against those who dared to challenge the status quo. The scales of justice were tipped, not in her favor. Legal aid, a lifeline for the disadvantaged, was stretched thin, leaving Sarah with limited options. The resources she needed were just out of reach, adding to her frustration. She faced a daunting choice: fight an uphill battle against a powerful system with limited resources, knowing the odds were stacked against her, or accept defeat and allow the injustice to stand unchallenged. It was a choice no one should have to make, yet it was the reality for many like Sarah. At the heart of Sarah's ordeal was the misconduct of a single police officer, a man sworn to uphold the law, who had instead chosen to abuse his power. This officer, who was supposed to be a guardian of the community, had turned into a perpetrator of injustice. His actions were not isolated incidents, but part of a pattern of behavior that had gone unchecked for far too long. His actions went beyond excessive force. He had repeatedly used his position to intimidate and control those he was meant to protect. The brutality he exhibited was not just physical, but also psychological, leaving lasting scars on his victims. He had violated Sarah's privacy, spreading malicious rumors about her mental health to discredit her claims. This was a calculated move to undermine her credibility and ensure that her voice would be silenced. The officer's manipulation extended to tampering with confidential files, altering records to suit his narrative. This officer, meant to be a symbol of safety and security, had become a source of fear and intimidation. His presence, which should have been reassuring, instead instilled dread in those who encountered him. The community, once trusting, now viewed him with suspicion and fear. The officer's actions were not just a personal betrayal of Sarah's trust, but a betrayal of the oath he had taken to serve and protect. His behavior was a stark contrast to the values he had pledged to uphold. The broken badge symbolized the shattered trust between the police and the community. He had tarnished the badge he wore, casting a shadow of doubt over the entire police force. His misconduct was a stain on the reputation of his colleagues, many of whom were dedicated to their duty. The shadow he cast was long and dark, affecting the morale of the entire department. His misconduct had far-reaching consequences, eroding public trust in law enforcement and creating a climate of fear and suspicion. The community's faith in the police was deeply shaken, leading to protests and calls for accountability. The headlines reflected a growing concern about the integrity of those sworn to protect. The officer's abuse of his position extended to manipulating evidence and intimidating witnesses. He went to great lengths to cover his tracks, ensuring that the truth remained hidden. Witnesses, fearful of retribution, were reluctant to come forward, further complicating the pursuit of justice. He used his authority to silence anyone who dared to speak out against him, creating a culture of fear within the community. His actions were a gross misuse of power, aimed at maintaining his control and avoiding accountability. The community, once vibrant and trusting, now lived in a state of constant apprehension. His actions were a stark reminder that power, unchecked and unaccountable, can corrupt even the most fundamental principles of justice. The scales of justice, meant to be balanced, were tipped by his misconduct. It was a sobering lesson in the importance of oversight and accountability in maintaining the integrity of law enforcement. The consequences of the officer's misconduct reverberated throughout Sarah's life. The incident, once whispered about in hushed tones, became a matter of public record. Her reputation, carefully built over years of hard work and dedication, was tarnished overnight. The stigma followed her like a shadow, making it impossible to escape the whispers and judgmental stares. Finding a new job proved impossible. Employers, hesitant to hire someone with Sarah's history, politely declined her applications. The financial strain became unbearable. Bills piled up, savings dwindled, and the threat of eviction loomed large. Sarah, once a self-sufficient woman, was forced to rely on the kindness of friends and family to keep a roof over her head. The emotional toll was equally devastating. Sarah, once a vibrant and outgoing individual, withdrew into herself, haunted by the trauma of that night. Sleep became elusive, nightmares a nightly occurrence. The stress manifested physically, leading to chronic pain and a weakened immune system. The justice she sought seemed further away than ever.